So hi and welcome back, and you may be able to see the coming out of my mouth. Anyway, that's beside the point. I've just got back from Portugal and I've not put the heating on yet. So this is how things have gone over the past few weeks. As before, I was working in Manchester. I've been doing things up there, and I've also been in Portugal for 6 days working. It's one of those strange lift things with all the mirrors and stuff, and you get the multiples. I hope it looks alright on here. It's kind of weird. And it's been a pretty crazy time, and I've not been able to do any film photography. Now, I should have taken one of my cameras out with me to Portugal. I didn't do that, and I'm glad I didn't, because obviously the weather was so bad. It rained most of the time. It was also very, very windy and overcast all the time. So it really didn't make much difference whether I took the camera or not. Anyway, just before I talk about what this is all about, I just want to show you this little secret box here. This is called, they're from Analog Revival, and I found them on eBay. If I remember, I'll put a link in the description. I've got some really interesting film from them, 2 rolls of it I'm going to try out in the next week or so. Also, the ramjet remover with the baking soda, I've been told by a friend it's not the best way to do it, and to get some proper chemistry to do it, so I'm going to do that instead. Anyway, on with today's video, and is using Lightroom and Photoshop and Affinity Photo really film photography? And it's really interesting. I met a friend on the street and we discussed this, and I explained to him about film photography and how it was back when I used to do it years ago, and I used to print my own colour photographs and I didn't develop my negatives. They were always done by a lab. It was just easier for me to have it done by a lab, and then me to use those negatives and print. And I quite often see film photographers on YouTube, and they'll scan the negative into Lightroom, and they'll use something like, I think it's Negative Lab Pro, and they like this particular profile, and then they'll perhaps go on and they'll tweak this color, and they'll touch that color, and they'll make that red pop. You couldn't do that in film photography. It's just not. It's not how it was. You know, on my enlarger I had 3 colors: yellow, magenta and cyan. Okay, and those were the color mixes. In fact, you only used yellow and magenta, you didn't use cyan. Cyan had become pretty much obsolete, and you would mix those 2 colors together to get a neutral balance for that negative. So that doesn't mean I can then perhaps like, oh, I'll change this like this little bit of color here and that bit of color there to make those red spots. It just didn't work like that. You were trying to obtain a neutral color cast. So it was red to blue to green, whatever it was going to be. You would be out trying to get a neutral color cast. You imagine doing like a wedding photographs, and they've got a white dress on and it's got a red tint to it. Okay, it's not like you could affect just the dress, you affect the whole print, you affect everything within that. By doing what you're doing in things like Lightroom isn't really the essence, and I say the essence of film photography. There's nothing wrong with it, it's just not what film photography was. And I much prefer, as you're going to see come over the coming weeks, is to me develop my own films and then scan them. I'm just going to try and get them to as neutral balance as I possibly can. That's the idea. That's why I see film photography. I'm not saying anyone else does is wrong. It's what they prefer. But in essence, film photography was, you had the film developed. They had yellow, magenta and cyan to mix together to make a neutral image. And they didn't always get that right. So sometimes you would get like color casts on negatives and stuff like that, so on the prints, which is very, very visible. We had lots of media labs, and they weren't necessarily well done. But you cannot change or make a red pop and then have the white a different like loudness or quietness or whatever you like to call it. It just wasn't possible back in those days. So that's what I wanted to say, and I have no disrespect for anyone who does it the other way, where they change and manipulate. But to me, as a film photographer, I want to do it as best I can digitally when I scan them and then put them on the computer to how I would have done if I had a print. And that's really it. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Something slightly different. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and buy me a coffee if you can. And I'll see you in a video very soon with some of this stuff and other stuff as well. So I've got lots of color negative film. All right, see you soon.